It's October 30th, 2017, and it's time to review 5 of the most outrageous, infuriating, or just plain baffling things that have happened lately. It's your Facepalm 5. Let's count them down. Number 1. Trump disrespects soldier's widow. Yes, for the second consecutive episode of this series, Donald Trump has done something so egregious that I feel compelled to mention it outside of the designated Lord Dampnut slot. Last time, of course, it was his guilt-tripping and threatening to abandon hurricane-ravaged Puerto Rico. This time, it's his shameful treatment of the widow of an American soldier. Week before last, Trump called Maisha Johnson, wife of Army Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, who was killed earlier this month in Niger. According to LaDavid Johnson's aunt and Representative Frederica Wilson, who were present and listening in, and Maisha Johnson herself, Trump was insensitive and disrespectful during the call, seeming to struggle to remember LaDavid's name and telling Maisha that her husband, quote, knew what he was getting into. Trump denies that the call went the way the Johnsons and Representative Wilson say it did. Last week, he told the press that he was very respectful, insisted he didn't fumble LaDavid Johnson's name, and heaped praise on Maisha Johnson, calling her, quote, a lovely lady and, quote, a fantastic woman. Which is the least he can do, seeing as how, in an attempt to save face, he is implying that she, her aunt, and Representative Wilson are all liars. Speaking of Representative Frederica Wilson and lies, number 2, White House Chief of Staff lies to attack congresswoman. Trump didn't like Representative Frederica Wilson telling everybody what a jerk he was to Maisha Johnson, and neither did Trump's Chief of Staff, John Kelly. Trump responded by calling Wilson a liar. Kelly responded by lying about Wilson. Kelly told reporters about how Wilson had used a speech at the dedication of a new FBI building in Florida 2 years ago to brag about how she had called up President Obama personally to get $20 million in funding for the project. According to Kelly, the audience attending the dedication were stunned at Wilson's shameless self-aggrandizement. That's not what happened. Video of the event released by the South Florida Sun-Sentinel shows that Representative Wilson gave a speech that lasted for less than 10 minutes and never mentioned, much less took credit for securing funding. Wilson did spend a few minutes discussing her role in pushing through a bill to have the building named after 2 FBI agents who were killed in Miami in 1986, though in doing so, she also credited then Speaker of the House John Boehner and Senators Marco Rubio and Bill Nelson for getting the bill passed in time for the dedication ceremony. The audience responded to that not with stunned silence, but with enthusiastic applause. So John Kelly is a liar. He made up a story in an attempt to discredit and embarrass a critic of Donald Trump, a critic who also just so happens to be a woman and a person of color. Nice to see that Kelly is fitting in so well with the rest of his colleagues at the White House. Number 3, judges victim blame assaulted women. Men being dismissive of abused women is nothing new, but the men I'm going to tell you about in a moment are also judges, which is also nothing new. God, that's depressing. Anyway, first, the Justice Minister of Quebec has condemned remarks made by a judge this past May. During the trial of a taxi driver who sexually assaulted a passenger, Judge Jean-Paul Braun suggested that the victim, a young woman who was 17 at the time of the assault, might have been grateful to get attention from an attractive older man because she was, quote, a bit overweight. Though Judge Braun did go on to say, quote, but she has a pretty face. Yeah, totally normal thing for a judge to say about a sexual assault victim at the trial of her attacker. Next, we have a judge in Portugal who considered the appeals of 2 men who were convicted after abducting and beating a woman. The judge observed that the victim, the ex-wife of one of her attackers and the ex-girlfriend of the other, had committed adultery, which was, quote, a very serious attack on the honor and dignity of a man. The judge also noted that in the Bible, adulterous women were sentenced to death. Thank you, Canada and Portugal, for reminding me that shitty men who blame women for the abuse they receive from other men aren't just an American thing, they're a global phenomenon. Number 4, right-wingers revive anti-Clinton conspiracy theory. Last year, Donald Trump accused Hillary Clinton of transferring 20% of America's uranium reserves to Russia while she was Secretary of State. It wasn't true. It was just one of numerous demonstrable lies told by Trump during the presidential campaign, and as such, it was largely forgotten. Until about a week and a half ago, when Trump and his surrogates started talking about it again. The Clinton uranium conspiracy theory began in 2015 when Breitbart editor Peter Schweizer published his book Clinton Cash, wherein he accused then Secretary of State Clinton of playing a leading role in approving the takeover of Uranium One, a company that owns uranium mines in the US, by the Russian State Atomic Nuclear Agency. Now, that takeover did take place, but there's no evidence Clinton had any direct involvement or that donations to the Clinton Foundation by people associated with Uranium One had anything to do with it. As evidence of his own troubling ties to Russian agents continues to accumulate, Trump has resumed pushing the Uranium One conspiracy, declaring it to be, quote, the biggest story the fake media doesn't want to follow. Trump supporter and totally not fake media person Sean Hannity has also been trying to provoke outrage about this story. Hannity, who dismissed allegations of Trump collusion with Russia as, quote, black helicopter tinfoil hat conspiracy theories, has declared the Uranium One story, quote, one of the biggest scandals this country has ever seen, and wondered if Robert Mueller will be looking into this Russian plot to control American uranium. Maybe so. I'm sure Robert Mueller is investigating all sorts of areas where there may have been Russian attempts to manipulate things here in the United States. But you know that already, don't you, Sean? That's why you're so desperate to keep everybody talking about this Uranium One conspiracy theory, especially now that the first charges are starting to come out, huh? Anyway, it's now time for the segment devoted to some of the other things Donald Trump has done recently to disgrace the presidency and embarrass and/or endanger the United States and the rest of the world. It's number 5, the further misadventures of Lord Dampnut. Please keep in mind, as always, the following is not a complete list. Before his disrespectful call to Maisha Johnson, Trump boasted that he calls the families of fallen soldiers, unlike previous presidents like Barack Obama, who didn't call. That's a lie which Trump repeated, insisting that he and he alone among presidents has a policy of calling Gold Star families. Trump also reportedly decided not to deport a man who came to the U.S. 3 years ago from China to escape arrest for rape and kidnapping charges after learning that the man was a dues-paying member of Trump's Mar-a-Lago club. When the children of some members of the White House press corps visited the Oval Office before going trick-or-treating, Trump took the opportunity to insult their parents and observed that none of the children seemed to have any weight problems as he passed out candy. And he tweeted that billionaire anti-Trump activist Tom Steyer was, quote, wacky and unhinged shortly after an ad sponsored by Steyer, which called for Trump's impeachment, aired on Fox and Friends. Yes, the President of the United States, who responds to efforts to impeach him for being shamelessly corrupt and dangerously incompetent by tweeting at the TV. That's 5. Speak out, act out, resist, and look after each other. Hey folks, hope you found this video worth watching. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe, and also please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron of this channel for as little as $1 a month. But if you can afford to go a little bit above and beyond and pledge at a level of, say, $5 a month or higher, one of the perks you get is a shout out at the end of the Facepalm 5, just like these fine folks who became $5 plus patrons since the last Facepalm 5, and they are Bridget Wolf, thank you Bridget, Mayumi, thank you Mayumi, Ben Stotler, thank you Ben, and Chris Abbey, thank you Chris. Thanks to all of my patrons at whatever level of support you are pledging. Thanks to all of you for watching, for all of your support in all its forms, and I'll see you next time.